Today is April 10, 2021. My name is Dorisa Rivera. I'm interviewing Alberto Escobedo for the University Library Special Collections and Archives at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley, hereafter abbreviated as UTRGV. This project is in partnership with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. Please know, Mr. Escobedo, that this interview will be placed in the University Library Special Collections and Archives at UTRGV and shared with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. If there's anything you do not wish to answer or talk about, I will honor your wishes. Also, if there's anything you want to talk about, please bring it up and we'll talk about it. The University Library Special Collections and Archive will archive your interview along with any other photographs and other documentation you are willing to share. UTRGV University Library will retain copyright or non-exclusive right to the interview and any other materials you donate to Special Collections and Archives at UTRGV. Because we are not conducting this interview in person, I need to record you consenting to make sure you agree with our interview procedures. Before we continue, so I'll ask you a series of 6 questions. Please say, yes, I agree, or no, I do not agree after each question. Number 1, do you give University Library Special Collections and Archives at UTRGV consent to archive your interview and your materials at the UTRGV University Library?
Yes, I agree.
2, do you grant UTRGV University Library Special Collections and Archives right, title, and interest in copyright over the interview and any materials you provide?
Yes, I agree, Ms. Rivera.
3, do you agree to allow UTRGV University Library Special Collections and Archives to post this interview on the internet where it may be viewed by people around the world?
Yes, I agree.
Do you grant the University Library Special Collections and Archives consent to share your Zoom interview with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin for inclusion in the Voices of a Pandemic Oral History mini project, which will include posting the interview on the internet?
Yes, I agree.
As you recall, we previously filled out a pre-interview form. We use information from the pre-interview form to help in research. The entire form is kept in secure Voces server at the University of Texas at Austin. Before Voces sends it UTRGV, University Library Special Collections and Archives, we would have it stripped out any information for yourself or family members, so that will not be part of your public file. Your public file will only be accessible at UTRGV University Library. The final 2 questions ask for your consent on what I just described. Number 5, do you wish for us to share the rest of your interview in your public file available to researchers at UTRGV University Library Special Collections and Archives?
Sure, I agree.
On occasion, UTRGV Special Collections and Archives and Voces receive requests from journalists who wish to contact our interview subjects. We only deal with legitimate news outlets. Do you give consent for us to share your phone numbers or your emails with journalists?
Yes, ma'am, I agree.
Thank you for your consent. Your experiences and stories mean a lot to us at UTRGV Special Collections and Archives. I look forward to what you say in the interview questions I will now ask. Okay. So, Alberto, first of all, I would like to thank you for taking the time to sit down with me and talk about your experiences during this life-altering time that we are all living through. As a man who serves this community of Rio Grande City as a business owner, a city commissioner, and the founder of a nonprofit here in Stark County, I know this interview in which you will share your meaningful stories is going to be very intuitive in giving a different point of view of COVID-19 and its effects. So before I ask you to share stories about your life in this pandemic, tell us, who is Alberto Esco?
Well, a man that was born in 1974 that has had to work hard to make it in through so much in this country. Of course, we come from a second generation that we come from Mexico, and I think the hardest thing is I was blessed to have been taught work ethic, and I think that is so important. Work ethic is so important. Not being afraid of getting your hands dirty, not being afraid of doing what you have to do in order to survive. And I think it's all about building yourself and reinventing yourself. Sometimes we can go to school and get a skill, but due to the fact of like the pandemic or so many other factors, sometimes we get stuck. So we have to reinvent ourselves and continue. And I think it's all about, I think that's who I am. We have to adapt to the circumstances and do the best that we can. And I think that's one of the things that it's so important to teach our children, that sometimes we don't get what we want, but we have to do what we have to do in order to survive.
Right. So the first question I want to ask you is, when did you first hear about COVID-19? How did you learn about it? The radio, the TV, your kids, social media?
It was social media, and I remember seeing it, and I thought it was fake. I thought it was not true. This is not happening. This is just happening. It's just, how everything just gets over proportion or gets overblown. And as a business owner, I continued moving forward. And when it hit us, and even today, it's surreal. Even today, I mean, we've lived through the pandemic over a year, and it's still surreal. I really, it's hard to believe. And the beauty of it, one is that we've learned to adapt, and another is we're survivors. And that's the beauty of it, that we have survived the pandemic, and we must continue taking care of ourselves in order and we'll be able to talk about this story to our grandchildren.
Right.
That we made it through a pandemic. Yes.
Okay. What was your first reaction to the information about COVID-19?
Again, it was first, I didn't believe it. And then secondly, well, it didn't affect me that much. And I'm gonna tell you why. I'm a germaphobic. I wash my hands so many times before a customer, after a customer. I guess as a profession, I'm a barber in profession. So I've always been, extremely clean. So that didn't affect me. But it was still a shock to start seeing people, of course, dying from something that none of us had a control over.
Mm-hmm. So at what point did you realize that this pandemic was a serious life-altering event, or do you not think it's serious? Why?
I strongly believe that it is serious, and because we started seeing people from our community not only becoming extremely ill, but some of them even dying. And I think it's so important that people take things like this seriously. And I think that if we do take things seriously and do what we have to do as a father, as a mother, as a business owner, my job is to make sure that I take care of not only my employees, but also our customers, keeping them safe and taking the precaution.
Right. So over the last few months, what news media, social media, or other sources do you rely on to keep you informed about coronavirus?
Well, everything was, of course, through my licensing. Of course, we had to continue taking, making sure that we would keep everything clean. But it was basically the one that everybody goes to, of course, is Facebook, Instagram, the news, and that's what we kept ourselves. What was happening around not only our community and our small city, but not our state and national and global.
Mm-hmm. The CDC.
The CDC, right? The CDC guidelines, most definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, can you share with me what you understand about COVID-19 as an infectious disease and any of its variants? Likewise, can you share with me what you don't understand about this new coronavirus?
Well, what I could probably tell you that I don't know is where exactly it started. That would be something, and that's been a question where they've mentioned that it came from a lab and, all that. I wouldn't know exactly the details. But what we do understand is what we have to do. It is making sure we wash our hands, making sure we don't touch our face, making sure that we take certain precautions to make sure that we keep ourselves healthy and keeping others healthy. I think it comes back to being responsible and making sure that if you're feeling sick, don't go out, stay home, protect yourself, protect your family. And of course, I think I am so excited as a leader of our community, as a commissioner, seeing that all our first responders, all our city employees have been vaccinated. I think that is so important. Vaccination is so important, making sure that we keep our people in our community safe. Right.
Can you tell me about what you know about the various vaccines available to the public? How do you feel about these vaccines?
I've done some research on Moderna, Pfizer, and Johnson and Johnson. I think they've all the research that I've done. They all look great, and we've all had great reviews on what we're seeing. And of course, you start seeing a lot of negative things on social media. I always tell people, do your research, ask your doctor. We can make certain decisions because we are not doctors, but that's why we have physicians. It is so important to ask questions because the fact that you're a diabetic or you have underlying illnesses doesn't mean that you don't qualify to get the vaccination. But I think all vaccines at this point are doing fantastic. And we are blessed that we are getting all three in our community.
Okay. Do you have a vaccination story you would like to share with me now or perhaps later in the interview?
What, I'm sorry?
A vaccination story?
Vaccination story. Well, basically, personally, when I got mine, I was concerned, because it's something new. I'm not gonna admit that I'm gonna admit that I was concerned and worried, but thanks be to God, I had no side effects the first one, and I had no side effects the second one as well. So I'm doing great, and I feel more than anything gives you peace of mind knowing that you do have that vaccine. And the people that I know, and as a barber and as a I speak to so many people, everyone has been doing great. And I think that's so important, that we need to make sure that people get the opportunity to get the vaccine.
Okay, that's good. I'm glad you're feeling okay.
Feeling great.
Okay. Do your family members hold the same beliefs as you about COVID-19, or are there some who take it more seriously or more lightly?
Most of us all take it serious. Most of us all take it serious. I don't think it's something you can take lightly. Your health, your life is something that is very important, and we all my family take this virus very, very, very seriously. And as business owners, I think we have to, like, making sure that everybody's wearing their mask, and making sure that we check our temperature, check the temperature of the customers before they go in, make sure we give them Germex, and it's all about social distance, and that's how we've kept ourselves healthy up to now.
So for the next set of questions, we're going to talk about how COVID-19 affected your family. As you know, school was put on hold for many, families could no longer gather, and many even faced loss of family members. You mentioned you have kids and a tight-knit family, so I would like to know what you have experienced. First of all, I would like to talk about your quarantine. I know now fear of COVID-19 has dropped significantly for many people in Texas, and it seems like we are returning to some degree of normalcy in the Rio Grande Valley. But what did you do in order to protect your loved ones when the pandemic was overwhelming the hospitals in South Texas and the deceased had to be stored in refrigerator trucks because morgues were filled?
It was so sad to see that. We stayed at home for 10 weeks. We didn't do much, but I always like to see the positive things on everything. And one of the positive things is that we were able to spend quality time as a family. And I think that's important. And the other thing is that we learned to appreciate the little things that we sometimes take for granted. I mean, the being able to go to church, the being able to go to the theater, the being able to go to the parks and to the grocery store. It's so important that we think back and now appreciate the little things in life. And the most important thing is family. We have to make time to spend time with our spouses and children. And I think that's what we've learned from this pandemic, that it is important that we appreciate precious time and that we appreciate the little things in life as well.
Right. So were there any family members that you went a while without seeing?
Yes. The hardest thing is I have an elderly mother. The hardest thing is not being able to see her or not to be able to touch her. In our culture, we're very touchy. We're always hugging and kissing, and not being able to spend as much time as I would want to. We finally started seeing each other, but it was still with social distance. Not being able to touch for such a long time, but we finally decided that we were going to hug and that we were going to kiss. And it was a very emotional time to be able to touch a loved one, my mom, to be able to tell her I love you and hug her and kiss her, because that's how precious life is.
Right. Okay. So you have a son and daughter, both of which were in high school when all the schools suddenly closed. How did they handle learning remotely and as teens adjust their social life?
I'm very blessed to have awesome children, and they're very resilient. They both adjusted very well. My son graduated, and it was it was a difficult graduation. He wasn't able to do the prom, and he wasn't able to do so many other things. My daughter had to study remotely, but they both adjusted very well. And I think that's the most important thing as a parent, to teach our children to improvise, to work through whatever comes in life, because that's basically life. Life is going to throw curveballs. So you just got to make the best of what life gives you, most definitely.
Right. So more specifically, you mentioned that your son was a senior in high school at the time, and it must have been rough to have your high school career end so abruptly. Can you please share with me what you or your community did to help graduating seniors preserve some of the traditions that usually accompany graduating?
Well, one of the things that the school district did is they did kind of like a drive-by graduation where cars had to, yeah, pass by. And it was difficult. It was difficult to see, because I know, like, my son was all excited that he was going to speak at his graduation because he was the president of his class. And I know that his girlfriend was also a salutatorian, and it affects so many people. But I think that if we learn from this experience, and graduation is just the beginning of life, and but we just need to continue moving forward. And I'm grateful that my son and my daughter just continued and make the best of what they had in front of them, which was very difficult. And it was difficult for me as a father to see them, because I wanted them to experience what I experienced,
Right.
the whole senioritis and the whole craziness. But I think that this is going to help them grow and to be a good business person, or a good, whatever he does in his career.
Okay. So you also mentioned to me that your son is currently back in school in San Antonio, which is about 4 hours away from home. How did this pandemic affect your son's initial plan after graduating high school?
Well, it was a change, and of course, he was able to get his associates through early college, and he decided to go into real estate, and business is in our blood, and he understands that. And of course, I was more geared in him finishing his undergrad and get his degree, but he preferred to get a real estate license and do that. And as a father, I think it's so important that we um, support our children regardless on what they want to study. And he wanted to do this, and it's doing good. I mean, one of the things that I think for him is difficult is to be able to study remotely. And San Antonio was offering some classes in person on weekends, so that's what he's doing right now. And I'm happy for him and very proud that he's been doing well so far.
So can you please tell me stories about how this commute is going and what pandemic related precautions you are taking now that he's back in person?
Right. Well, the thing is, of course, Lysol. Lysol is your lifesaver, and Clorox wipes, and but to us now has become norm. And like I mentioned earlier, I've always been a germaphobic, so that doesn't go away. So nothing has changed, to be honest with you. We go to the hotel, we clean the room, and when you go to the hotel, and that's it's okay. I mean, that's what we do, and to me, it's all about protecting the family and making sure that he stays healthy. I think at one point we're all going to get the virus, so that's why it's so important that we keep our immune system strong. So when we do get the virus, we are strong enough to resist whatever virus you have.
Right. So you let me know that after several months of being on a city lockdown, your family lost a loved one. If you're still comfortable talking about it, may I ask what it was like arranging and attending a funeral during the time in COVID-19 when families could not gather in traditional ways?
It was so difficult to see uh, my father go, of course, and but beautiful at the same time, because he died surrounded from family. He was so against of being at the hospital, of course. And as you know, when you go to the hospital, you couldn't have a family member, you were alone.
Mhm.
And when I got there, I asked him, we knew he was ill, and I asked him, Papa, the paramedics are here. Do you want to go to the hospital? And he says, no, I want to stay here. And I'm glad I did. And I told the paramedics no. Of course, my family was like, my sister was like, he needs to go. He's sick. And I said, he's not going anywhere. He wants to stay home, and he's going to stay home. and he wouldn't have made it to the hospital. He passed at home, and I was able to hold his hand, and I was able to tell him I loved him, and I was able to tell him that it was going to be a glorious day, that he would see the face of Jesus Christ that evening, or that morning actually, and he sure did. It was. I'm very grateful that I had the opportunity to be there with my father in the last minute of his life, and then to be able to hold his hand and tell him that everything was going to be all right. And it wasn't goodbye; it was till later, because we will see each other one day, most definitely.
So the next set of questions will focus on your stories as a local businessman and entrepreneur during COVID-19. In your pre-interview, you spoke of the steps you took in your education to get where you are today as a very well-known barber in Stark County. Could you please talk about your business and when and how you started it?
Well, I was the business started due to my mother. My mother was a hairdresser. She started in 1967. And she would always tell me for me to go into this profession. And I always said, no, that was for women. I wasn't interested in doing that. I was actually getting my undergrad in music education and performance at the University of Texas Pan American. I'm an opera singer. And that was it's pretty difficult to survive as an opera singer. So I figured I'll become a teacher in the music world. I had the opportunity to go to school in West Laco. I was interested in getting my barbering license. So I went to barber school in West Laco and got licensed and started working, figuring that that was going to be my stepping stone to finish my undergrad, not knowing that I was going to fall in love with my profession. Fell in love with my profession, and I started doing the barbering. It was love at first sight. I started. It was in the arts. And more than anything, it's being able to interact with so many people, and your clients become your friends then become your family, and it becomes a beautiful circle, and to be able to not only make them look better but make them feel better themselves. I'm their bartender. I'm their friend, and not only in making them look better, but it has been a journey. I mean, it's a short career. It was just 9 months. It took me a year to finish. Most people take about a year to get their license. Passed my examination and started working, and it's like anything else. I think when you start any profession, it's a struggle because nobody knows you, but you just have to be. I think what the key to anything in success is consistency and not giving up. You fall, you get up. You fall, and you get up again, and you fall, and you get up again until you make it. So yes.
Lessons, right?
Yes.
Last March and April 2020, Rio Grande City was put on a lockdown and only essential businesses were allowed to open, such as grocery stores. Can you share with me how this lockdown affected your business and you? What financial or personal stresses did you face?
It was very difficult not being able to work, but I knew that it had to get done. I knew it was for the betterment of our health and our community. And I knew that it was going to be very difficult because not everybody wants to pay attention to the mandates. I mean, your governor is saying that you have to close, because it's for the best for our community. Was it difficult business-wise? Of course it was, not making any income. And yet you still have a light bill, water bill. And that's the weird thing that I figured, well, the light bill's gonna go down, the water bills, everything stayed the same. I probably spent $30 less in light. I couldn't understand if I wasn't working for almost 2 months, more than 2 months. And yet the light bill was still high, the water bill, insurances, we're still paying for insurances, you're still paying for internet, phone, your expenses are still up there, and yet you're not making any money. Yet the only thing is that what kept me up is that I'm a man of faith. Right. And I knew God was going to provide somehow. The most important thing is that I knew that my wife and my children were safe, my mom was safe, my sister was safe and her family. We were going to make it, and I'm beyond grateful that we're back operating, and we're not at 100%, but I am grateful that we're working.
Good. So, did you apply for any government assistance like a PPP loan? And if so, how was this application process and outcome?
I sure did. And I was beyond grateful that we got some assistance. It wasn't much, but yet still very grateful for it. Any little bit helps. As a business owner, when this came along, we were very grateful because it's actually what helped us restart,
Mhm.
something where we had not been working for so much time. So we were very grateful that we qualified for the PPP, and that has helped us to. And then there was a second wing of PPP, and we qualified for that one as well. The process is, of course, a lot of paperwork, but at the time I wasn't working, so no big deal. We had all the time in the world to be answering as many questions and doing paperwork as much as we can. But yes, we did, and we were grateful. We're very grateful to our federal government that provided assistance to all those businesses. So many businesses around the nation.
So, how did it feel going from an intense everyday work life to a complete lockdown? What did you do during your downtime at home?
Oh, first of all, we gained weight. We all gained weight. We did some eating. We watched lots of series, Netflix. I'm not a TV person. There's never time for television. There's no time because I'm always working. But I do appreciate the fact that I spend quality time with the family, and that's what we did. And we prayed. I mean, I think it's so important to pray. Pray that God would keep us safe and that we would be all right and make it through this. Because at one point we didn't know if we were going to make it through all this because we were seeing people dying left and right.
So, other than your business, you have spoken of your job as being a landlord in your city. I know there was a rule set in place that did not allow landlords to penalize their tenants for late rent because many people lost their jobs due to COVID-19. Is there anything you would tell me about how you dealt with tenants and any financial hardships they suffered?
One of the things I knew exactly what they were going through because I was going through it, and I had to be patient.
Mhm.
I had to be patient and wait until they had the money to pay. Um, but I had to be patient, and it's the right thing to do. It's the humane thing to do.
Mhm.
You can't throw them out into the street just because they don't have the money. Especially, the businesses, because we have commercial rentals and we also have residential rentals. And those are investments that I've done along the way and have helped me um, financially, to be able to make ends meet through my business and the rentals. But those were investments that I've done slowly. But to answer your question, it was just being patient with the people that could not pay their rent.
And it wasn't because of any laws or anything, it was just kind of
Yeah, no, well, I know that there was loss, but it was the right thing to do. I mean, you just have to be, you have to have a heart, and just have to be patient because at one point they were going to pay. It just we all just had to make adjustments.
Mhm.
We all had to adjust because nevertheless, we still have to pay taxes, we still have to pay the water bill, light bill, that we still have to pay insurances. That doesn't wait. We still have to pay. Yeah.
So during our pre-interview, you spoke also of opening up a new salon location in a neighboring town. I hear that this new venture is near a grand opening. So can you share with me why you decided to open a new business during the pandemic and how you are able to achieve this success?
We purchased the building prior to COVID-19. It was remember when I was telling you that I didn't believe it? I was seeing it on social media. Um, you know, um, I was born in McAllen, Texas, but raised in Rio Grande. And my dream was always to go open a beauty and barber shop in McAllen. It just seemed pretty difficult because property is extremely expensive in McAllen. And the opportunity came, and I always thought I would build in South 10th, South 23rd, and we were able to purchase a piece of property on Olana, which is north of McAllen. And it took us a long time to remodel due to the pandemic because we had to stop remodeling the building. We gutted the whole building and we started from scratch, new plumbing, new electrical, new walls, new everything, new flooring, new ceiling, new facade. Um, but I'm grateful. I
Mhm.
am grateful that we're completely done. It's finished, and our grand opening will be in a couple of weeks. We're actually going to start next week working in the McAllen area to be able to take care of our clients. We have clients in the McAllen area, Mission area, La Jolla, and we even have clients from Brownsville that they travel 2 hours to Rio Grande to be able to get their hair done. So now they're just gonna have to travel just 1 hour to McAllen. So it's a blessing to be able to, so I will be having a staff in Rio Grande and a staff in McAllen, and I will be the one traveling back and forth.
How exciting.
Yes, thank you.
So as a business owner, do you feel like enough was done at the state and federal level to help small businesses across America?
I strongly believe that our governor and our president did the best they could.
Mhm.
You know, so many people criticize them, and I can't, because nobody had a manual for something like this.
Right.
You know, could it have been done better? Most definitely. Could it have been the way it was done? Could it have been divided in a different way? Yes, 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 and yes. But they did the best they could, in my opinion. I know as local government, we did the best that we could to keep our people safe, and we did the best that we could to make sure that we had enough vaccines, that we had enough everything in our community. I think all governments, our local, state, and federal, we did the best that we could to make sure that we kept our people safe.
Right. So we're going to move on to the nonprofit.
Okay.
One of the organizations you mentioned that you were part of during our pre-interview was about the local nonprofit Casa Esperanza. Not only are you a member of this organization, but I believe you founded it, correct?
Yes.
Could you tell me about how and when Casa Esperanza started, who were its founders, and how does it serve our community?
In 2015, Casa Esperanza was born. It was born because of a gentleman. There was a gentleman that once asked me that, well, he says, his question was, are you wealthy? And I said, no. And he says, yes, you are. And I said, no. He says, but do you have breakfast, lunch, and dinner? And I said, of course I do. He says, well, then you're wealthy. Because sometimes I don't have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I just could not understand that in this day and time, people in our country were going hungry. I came home that evening and I told my wife, honey, we're opening, this was in 2014, so we're going to open a soup kitchen. So Casa Esperanza was born. We have people in our community that are homeless and do not have a place to sleep and do not have food. So Casa Esperanza was born, and it started off really small, and now we have 755 families. We are able to assist over 4,000 people in our county. To be honest with you, it is the most, the most beautiful blessing, and what I am the proudest, next to my children, of course, of all my accomplishments. Esperanza is very close to my heart, and to be able to be part of something bigger than life, bigger than anything. And it's ran by, I'm the founder, but it's ran by volunteers. It is a beautiful thing to be able to serve. And I always tell my volunteers, when we're serving, we are serving God. That's the most important. We're serving Him, and leave it all to Him. And it always works, where we're able to feed so many people. And because we also had a shelter for many years, and we were able to shelter people in need when hurricanes or when the weather was, when it was very cold, extreme weather, we were able to serve that. I'm excited that I was able to make contact with our Congress, Henry Cuellar, and I asked for $2 million for a shelter. So we are working hard on getting a shelter in our community, which we don't have. This will be a massive, beautiful shelter that will be servicing the people of Rio Grande. And to be honest with you, the county, the whole county will be serving that. So that is coming in the future within the next year, year and a half, God's willing. I'm working hard as a commissioner, making sure that our people in our community, especially to me, my elderly, my young kids, and veterans.
Mhm.
You know, there's so many veterans that are out there homeless. We need to take care of our own before we start taking care of others.
That is very interesting. Another exciting venture for you, right?
Yes, yes.
So, did you notice a difference from before times of COVID-19 to now in the types of people that it helped serve, or the new ways it had to help out in besides feeding the hungry? Well, you mentioned the shelter, but
Yes. The question is yes. I saw a difference where I'm seeing more middle class struggling that are not making ends meet. And to me, it's an honor to be able to help. I've had teachers that have come and they put themselves in line and they're embarrassed because they don't want to get in line, but they're not making it. Or there are people that work at grocery stores and they've never asked and they don't get welfare, but they're struggling because their hours were cut, or now they're not making, their income has changed, or their spouse lost their job. And like I tell them, we're here to serve. We're here to serve regardless. And if you need the help, they should not be embarrassed.
Right.
This is we are here to help each other as a community. And we should not criticize because you have a job or there's two jobs. We are here to help, bottom line. But I have seen a difference. There is more need. There is more need due to COVID-19. It has affected financially across the board.
Very well said. So did your nonprofit struggle due to the new large demand of people?
Yes, it did, but by God's grace, we're still open. God is good. We struggled, and I mentioned, because all I do, everything that I've done in life, now that, of course, when I was single, I would comment or talk to my mom about certain things or projects I had. And when I got married, well, then I had my wife, and then we had children. Well, I discussed with my children, when I ran for office, it was a family decision. When anything that happens with Casa Esperanza, it's still a family decision. It's a family run nonprofit. So I need every single member of my family. Even my mother has an input on Casa de Esperanza, because she says, I'll cook this for you guys, or I'll do this, or we have this at the house and I don't want it to get spoiled. Let's go ahead. Because we have so much food at home and we throw so much. We throw tomatoes, we throw onions that got spoiled, we throw ham and cheese and bread that gets spoiled, yet we have people going hungry. How can we do that? So it's a whole family affair to make sure that we are able to make Casa Esperanza function. And so, like I was telling you, by God's grace, we were able to maintain it open, but we did struggle.
Well, I'm glad it stayed open. So you not only serve your community through Casa Esperanza, but you mentioned to me that you won a seat for city commissioner during the pandemic in 2020. Can you share with me some stories about what it's like to run for a city official position during COVID-19?
It was difficult. Our election was supposed to be in May, and the election got moved to November. Um, and really and truly, I really didn't know how it was going to be. I was with a mask the whole time, and still seeing people and waving to people, and it was a difficult election. Thanks be to God, it was an awesome election. The numbers were high. It wasn't a close race. It was a great race. People went out and voted and elected their servant. I am here to serve. As a politician, as a public servant, I think it is important to serve your community with all your heart and with the duty, because people have elected you to do what is right, and that is to spend taxpayers' money the best way possible and be very meticulous to make sure that we spend it correctly. It is very important that we spend taxpayers' money correctly.
Great. So how did you campaign? Did you have to rely heavily on social media?
Social media, a lot of social media, but elections are expensive. That's why people don't run. It is very, very, very expensive. But yet, I knew that in order to make a difference in our community, I needed to have a voice. And that is being part of a public servant, to be able to ask for funds. Like, I had no idea what it entailed, but now as a commissioner, to be able to have a connection, be able to have the telephone number of Henry Cuellar or Safarini or anybody in Washington, to be able to ask for funding or grants. We have a grant writer that I'm constantly moving forward to make sure that we have the parks and we have all the funding for our community, but it requires a person with a vision. One of the things that I'm working on is also an airport in our area. It's going to be our municipality airport, but I see growth. I see in the next 10 to 15 years to actually have an international airport in Rio Grande, and it is very possible. It all starts with a dream, and it becomes a reality.
Right, very well said. So, how did the pandemic make election day different from previous years? I mean, it was my first election day, so I don't know what it was like before. So, I would like to hear it from you.
Well, what I noticed, because uh, I've been in several campaigns. Uh, it was difficult in a way because we could not interact like we used to. Uh, but we had to rely on people coming out and voting. Um, it was a difficult election, and that was also all the way to the presidential election. We saw it very, very difficult, and we saw a lot of people doing mail-ins. We saw a lot of people, but they got their voice counted. They made sure that their voice was heard, and I think it's important that we go out and vote. And I saw numbers. I didn't think I was going to see so many people going out in person, and I saw those people going out because they know how important it is to vote and count, for make your vote count. And I saw it firsthand. The only thing is there was less interaction. It was more from far ways, waving,
Mhm.
and saying hello. But elections are very expensive. But I always tell people, run, run for office. I always feel that there's a lot of people that complain, but don't do anything about it. You really want to do something about it, you better go vote. And you want to do even something more, run for office, because then your voice will be heard.
Mhm.
You are an elected official and you have a vote.
Right.
So if we complain, if you don't vote and you don't run for office, you don't have the right to complain.
So, how does the pandemic affect your current role as city commissioner?
It was difficult because everything is virtual. But I don't think that it would affect so much. I mean, that where it's difficult is still having to mandate, that we have to wear a mask. And I think that's so important. We see so many people walking all over town without masks. I strongly believe if you're going to go to HEB, you're going to go to Walmart, you're going to be in a place where there's going to be a lot of people, wear your mask, protect yourself. And I know the governor has taken that off, but as a city commissioner, we have not. We want to continue keeping our community safe for a little bit longer. I think once we're all vaccinated, things will change. Things will start changing. We'll probably just wear our mask seasonal. We'll wear it only when we go on an airport or
Yeah.
we're with a lot of people, but things are starting to look much better. I know as a city commissioner, we're already thinking in the next couple of more meetings, we will start meeting in person, which I think it's so important that we have more interaction as commissioners and making sure that we can talk and make sure that we can move our community forward.
Right. Baby steps, baby steps.
Baby step. We're doing good.
So, as a city commissioner, do you help create or remove regulations due to COVID-19?
Not remove at all. I think it's just all on making sure that we're keeping our city safe. And I think one of the most important is talking to our leaders, like our medical staff, what is their recommendation, what's going on in the medical world, how is the vaccine doing, state and local, state and federal, how are we seeing numbers? And that's where we can, as leaders of our local leaders, is we start making recommendation, what we think is best for our community.
Okay. So, was there ever a time that you had to ask for help at a state or federal level for your community pertaining to the pandemic?
Most definitely. We have asked and we have received. We have received help, and we are grateful with the state and the federal government. First of all, we started asking and sending letters for vaccines because if you remember, we were not getting any vaccines because we're considered a rural area. But once we started asking, we started receiving, and we were able to vaccinate our people in our community. And also funds for COVID-19, because we have seen like a lot of overtime in the fire department because most of them were getting sick. So the others would have to work to be able to make sure that we had our city safe, and the same thing in the police department. And so we got assistance to be able to pay all those employees that have been doing overtime.
Is there anything else you'd like to add or share about being a city commissioner and how this pandemic affects this new role of yours?
Well, I guess the only thing I can add is that we have to learn to adjust to what comes, and we need to learn and grow from this, because other things will come. Other things will come, and as leaders and servants of this community, it is important that we learn from our mistakes, because we're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes, but we want to not make so many mistakes. Make sure that everything is done the best that we can as a community, because we have to make sure that our businesses and the people of our community have what they need. And I think I'm still in the learning state. I'm still learning, and I will continue learning. But I strongly believe that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just have to see, what are our neighbors doing? Is it working? Even if it's not, let's don't do it. Let's don't do that same mistake that they're doing. And I'm just very grateful with Google. I Google everything. If I don't know it, I Google it and find out how it works, why it works. But I am excited to serve our community as a commissioner, and will work hard to make sure that we leave a better tomorrow.
Very well said. So now to close, I'll ask you some final questions.
Sure.
Are you satisfied with the local response to COVID-19 in Rio Grande City, Texas?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Do you wish to elaborate?
I am satisfied. You meant how everything has happened with COVID-19?
Yeah, like the way they responded to COVID-19, like mandates and stuff.
Our mandates, most definitely. I think our community was one of the first communities in the valley in Rio Grande that we reacted quickly to make sure that we kept everything safe and that people were wearing masks. Our grocery stores were one of the first grocery stores that were asking for them to wear masks as well. I know our doctor and staff at that point was Dr. Jose Vasquez. Now we have Dr. Falcon, the mayor. Everybody reacted quickly to making sure that we kept our community safe. So most definitely, I think our leaders did the best that they could to make sure that they kept everybody safe.
Are you satisfied with the state response to COVID-19 led by Texas and Greg Abbott?
As well, like I mentioned earlier, I think he did the best that he could at the time. And it's we can always disagree and agree. And one of the things I've always said, even in politics, it's like watching a football game. It's so much easier to see it from the bleachers than when you're working, like when you're actually playing the game. Same thing with when you're making decisions. You're making decisions to the best of your ability at the moment of what you're seeing in front of you. As a politician, I always say it's always important to see the whole deck of cards. And sometimes not all the deck of cards are given to you to make those decisions. But we learn. I think we always learn, because there's been decisions that I'm like, oh, I could have done it this other way, or I could have done this other thing, but I didn't know at the moment the whole thing. So that's where it's a responsibility to make sure we know everything, to make sure that we make the best decision at the moment. Because sometimes as politicians, when we make not the right decision, is because we don't know the whole fact, or the fact is they don't give us the whole fact, right, because they want for something to go. But I strongly believe that local, state, and federal did the best that they could. Could have been better? Yes. Are we going to learn from this and improve? Yes. Yes, we are. And we're growing.
So national, like you mentioned, are you satisfied with the current national response to COVID-19 led by President Biden and his administration?
Yes, both when it was, because of course, remember, we started with Trump at the moment. When it was Trump, it was when everything was going on. And now with Biden, I think as politicians or as people, we don't always agree. And I always want to understand when they make certain decisions, because sometimes for me, it's kind of difficult to understand when they're doing something. So I always ask, and I always call other politicians, or why is this happening? Why is this decision being made? And it's very difficult and very touchy because some people will always say, well, oh, well, why not? But can we really afford to do certain decisions that are being made federal? But we just need to take it one day at a time. And that seeing all those people coming from different countries coming into our country, and that's where it makes it kind of difficult. Those are one of the things that I feel. But when it comes to the pandemic, I think everybody has done a pretty good job when it comes to COVID.
Mhm. And if you had the power to respond to COVID-19 with policies, laws, or workplace decisions, what would you do differently, if anything?
What would I do different? I think that, first of all, there were states that were taking it very lightly, number one. I think that if people would have been more proactive than reactive, we would have been able to save more lives. And that would have been mandating to making sure that people were wearing their mask. There was states in different parts of the country that they didn't do those things until the very end.
Mhm.
And I think that that's why we see people from other countries, such as China, and that did really, really well because their people did what they had to do. I think it all comes back to making sure that we're Americans and we're free, and I'm grateful to be an American and proud to be an American, but I have a duty as an American to take care of other Americans, have a duty as a father to take care of my family, and have a duty as a commissioner to take care of my own community as well.
So, are there any other stories or experiences you would like to share with me that I have not asked about? Final question, by the way.
Of anything that you've asked, no. I mean, I think we talked about everything when it came to COVID-19 and business and how difficult it was. But, I am grateful we survived it, number one. I am grateful that we are doing much better as a city, as a state, and as a country. And I think it's going to be a bright future. There's no way but up from here. But nevertheless, we have to continue working hard. Nevertheless, we have to continue doing what we have to do to protect our families.
Very well said. Well, if there's nothing else you would like to share, once again, I would like to thank you for taking the time to do this interview and sharing your experiences with me. Your contributions to this project have been wonderful.
Thank you, Ms. Rivera. It's always a pleasure. Anything you need, you know where to find me. You have a blessed night.
Thank you. Likewise.
Likewise. Ciao.